Today on the MotoMan Podcast, we were told American manufacturing was a relic of the past, that a fragile global supply chain was just the cost of doing business. But the tide is looking to turn.
A single-sourced, fragile global supply chain can bite you in the butt. And so that is causing a lot of reshoring, of getting suppliers closer to you.
Enter the EV boom, a world of massive tech valuations that quickly collapsed when government mandates met the absolute brutality of the marketplace.
Production hell means you got so many more problems than you can handle at one time. And that's where great problem-solving skills come into play, but it just means it's hell. And it's not hell for a week, it's hell for a year.
To survive, a Jeff Bezos-backed startup had to completely reject the legacy playbook and embrace a radical philosophy: ruthless simplicity.
What I learned at Rivian, we try to do too much too soon. It is simplify, simplify, simplify. Focus.
Today, board director and employee number one, Rod Copes, peels back the narrative on Slate Auto and the painful reality check of affordability the car business desperately needs.
The automotive companies are deceptive. They lead with a price that the customer will never get that vehicle.
We learned that this is definitely more than just a cheap new electric pickup truck, but could it be the renaissance of American manufacturing? Rod, I had no idea how much I wanted to talk to you in reference to Slate.
Oh, really?
I came up to John Volker. John Volker, this guy, he knows EVs backwards and forwards. But he's also, he's got a soft spot for weirdo, broken down British cars. That's his thing. But in that whole interaction with John, you asked me what I thought of the company. And there I gave you a SWOT analysis. Basically, the good, the affordability. I'm a huge Dave Ramsey guy. My audience knows this about me. Love the accessories. Love CJ. Let's not forget that. Love the accessorization. But the whole thing about where you come in, that's why I wanted to have you on the podcast. Give us a little bit of your resume, and I'll weave in kind of your experience of why I'm excited about this.
The shortened version is I spent about 20 years at Harley-Davidson, left there in 2012, and kind of followed my entrepreneurial spirit into smaller companies and startups. I worked at Royal Enfield, another motorcycle company, for about 5 years.
Actually, don't just drive past that. That's kind of an important thing of what is Royal Enfield? What was important about it?
Yeah, so Royal Enfield, was founded in 1901 in England, but is now an Indian-based company. And what I helped them do was reintroduce the brand into the United States and then reestablish a middleweight motorcycle segment that had been kind of depleted over the years because everyone chased Harley up to the high end. So there's a lot of similarities with Slate and Royal Enfield, quite honestly. And so we were able to go from a couple of hundred motorcycles sold a year in the US to almost 20,000. So it showed that affordability can be cool and enjoyable and bring in a whole new set of customers. And so that's one data point. Harley-Davidson, that experience there taught me about personalization and customization. And then after Royal Enfield, I went to Rivian, where I was their first COO. And for almost 2 years, I learned about scaling very quickly in a very fast and frugal and scrappy way. So after I left Rivian, I get a call from a couple of my former graduate school classmates, and they talked about this EV company concept they had. And the first thought was, the last thing this world needs is another EV company. But as I read their business plan, really what came to my mind were those three experiences I just talked about: Harley-Davidson customization, Royal Enfield, the entry level but cool, and then lastly Rivian startup. And the intersection of those is really the concept of Slate.
So there's a lot of moving parts there, but there's one piece you kind of forgot about. Those colleagues or friends of yours from graduate school, they really weren't Slate. What were they doing?
Right. So we had gone to school at MIT in a small program called Leaders for Manufacturing that was started in the late 80s in response to the U.S. manufacturing kind of declining and the Japanese auto company kind of eating our shorts in the U.S. And so we drank the Kool-Aid. We spent 2 calendar years talking about U.S. manufacturing and how to be leaders of that. We all parachuted out, had incredible careers, some better than others. And I'd say Jeff and Miles were 2 of the top at the class. And so now we're at the sunset of our careers, and we can actually have a bigger impact on U.S. manufacturing. So Jeff and Miles joined forces.
What had Jeff and Miles done prior to all this in there from my MIT to that point?
Well, Jeff, he went to Allied Signal right out of MIT, but then he got a call from a guy by the name of Jeff Bezos in the 90s and joined Amazon before most people knew who Amazon was, and ultimately had a 20-plus year career there. He left as one of the 2 CEOs working for Jeff Bezos, and Jeff managed all the consumer commercial side of business, everything outside of the cloud, the web work that the other CEO handled. So Jeff retired from there. Miles, he's a character. I mean, he's a New Yorker, and what he did right out of MIT is his goal was to go help U.S. machine tool companies be successful. And so he did a couple of turnarounds with them, and then he joined a PE firm, and that was their focus, and then broadened, and ultimately he created his own private equity firm. And that's when he and Jeff talked and decided there's this bigger thing that we have to do that we talked about in graduate school is we need to help revitalize U.S. manufacturing. So they joined forces and created Rebuild Manufacturing at the end of 2020. And, their network and friends and family are much better than mine. And so they raised money, and they were well on their way for about a year when Miles came up with this concept of an affordable electric vehicle. And as they talked with their board of directors, it didn't really fit with what their vision was of Rebuild Manufacturing. And but the long and short of it was their board agreed to seed it, to sponsor it. So we created a small entity, a wholly owned subsidiary under Rebuild, while we proved and confirmed feasibility at the end of 2022. And then early 23, we spun off and we did our first Series A raise.
So full disclosure, that is the most exciting part of Slate for me. The whole revitalizing manufacturing in the U.S. Now, you're the first person I'm actually speaking to that was connected with the rebuild part. Jeff has hidden them from me for some reason. I don't know why. Maybe you should speak to him about this. What give me like 3 specific reasons that you and Miles and the other gentleman got together and said, we want to bring manufacturing back, or a certain kind of manufacturing back to the U.S.? What would 3 reasons?
Well, I mean, Jeff and Miles speak to it every day. Jeff Wilkie and Miles speak to it every day. U.S. manufacturing is the lifeblood of our country. It's necessary not just for economic prosperity, for us and future generations to have a good livelihood, because service jobs can't do that necessarily. But there's another big part of it, and it's, our country. It's our defense. It's our capabilities. We know that, other countries are trying to get the U.S. as a superpower out of the number 1 spot. So it's both economical, it's also, just the health of the country. And quite honestly, we've seen, manufacturing kind of over the past couple of decades kind of be pushed out of the United States. And it's mostly, those big legacy companies who are looking for lower costs. And so they chased some labor rates and low-cost suppliers overseas. A number of reasons the tide has changed. One, we had a pandemic that showed how how a single-sourced, fragile global supply chain can bite you in the butt, and that will never happen again. And even the Toyota production system is all about being lean, but nobody predicted that a pandemic could happen. It was kind of the black swan that happened. So now part of the strategy of all manufacturing companies in the U.S. has to be their supply chain. And so that is causing a lot of reshoring, of getting suppliers closer to you. Whether you like it or not, the Trump administration is also doing some policy changes with tariffs and other things that are also advantageous to have your supply chain and to grow manufacturing in the United States.
I don't think I've ever said this on the podcast. Amen to everything you just said. Everything you just said is a frustration that I have lived through, not just since the pandemic, but I was in tech 15 years. And I was at the beginning part of this where it was, I remember my CEO pushing me, you need to do offshoring here, here, and here. And I would give him like 10 reasons why we shouldn't. No, you got to do it. We would do it. And invariably would have to go and redo it back in the US. So amen to everything you just said. But let's put some specific points to it. You said there's some aspects that have changed since the pandemic. You brought up national security, which I think many people gloss over. You brought up the tariffs. Put aside those two. What are like 3 aspects of manufacturing that's changed to make the U.S. back on the menu and competitive again in terms of this kind of manufacturing?
Great question. Off the top, I think one of the strengths of U.S. manufacturing for over 100 years is the continued improvement in productivity. Some of that's driven by technology, some of it's driven by brute force, some of it's driven by just the culture of the United States, right? And people. But what we have now is we have a lot of new technology coming. And obviously AI is a big part of it, but it's not the only part of it. There's other tools and philosophies and practices that are coming that are continuing to improve productivity in U.S. manufacturing. And I think larger, not just the larger, even the startup manufacturing or startup companies are realizing the benefit that they can have. And what I learned at Rivian was, while cash is king, and a lot of small businesses and startups go out of business because they don't have cash, time is the biggest constraint. And what I learned at Rivian was life-changing, because I had worked 20 years at Harley-Davidson, a big old legacy company. But what has happened in the last 20 years is the startup mindset has really blossomed, and there are hundreds and thousands of startups and entrepreneurial, college kids trying to dethrone the big legacy companies every day. And what is now king is time. The agility and the time, getting to market quicker is everything. So that's why at Rivian, I really truly learned this fast, frugal, and scrappy. And we brought that to Slate, and we basically said time is our biggest element, our biggest challenge. And so how do we do things much more quickly without raising the risk, but managing the risk so that we can actually get to market more quickly than the big legacy companies?
So let's be very specific about this. When I first, again, full disclosure, Jeff, your head of communication, very good friend of mine, great guy. So I kind of knew early on what he was doing. And then I finally saw the car last year, very excited about it. Granted, I mean, we could debate over the 2-wheel drive, all-wheel drive thing and 4-door versus 2-door thing. I think those are your only weaknesses. But put that aside for now, because I want to have more of a manufacturing discussion with you. I remember up and down, my friend CJ, who's sitting over there right now, telling us, yeah, we're going to have this car out end of 2026. Now, I worked 5 years for a very small computer company you never heard of called Apple. And we used to make statements like that all the time. And, we'd be like, hey, it's coming out for Christmas 1997. And like Christmas 2020, it still ain't out. You are still saying Q4 2026. Number one, is that reality? And if it isn't, I'm going to come find you. And then number 2, how can you hit that date? 3 reasons how you can hit the date.
So that is reality. And we've been saying that for 4 years. That's been the objective, the target, the plan. And early on, we built a purposeful culture and based on people and integrity and knowing. CJ and I learned this at Harley-Davidson when Harley was a different company, and it was all about relationships with all stakeholders. Those were critical. And so we learned relationships and telling the truth is a big part of our future culture, but also how customers and all stakeholders are going to look at us. So when we put out the date of end of 2026 4 years ago and said, that's what we're going to do, and we didn't have a lot of buffer in there, it's all about execution. It's about focus and execution. It's not trying to do 5 different models and 3 different programs. It's about doing one thing really, really well. And, if you've read Good to Great by Jim Collins, it's focus, right? And that book's 20, 30, 40 years old.
But okay, I'm going to interject here. I've read that book.
Yeah.
I'm all about the focus. I love the In-N-Out burger model. You make one thing and people line up. But we're talking about a 4-wheeled vehicle that has governments telling you what to do. What are like 3 specific things you guys have done? And not a word like focus. What are like 3 specific things you guys have done to hit that date with not just a entirely new vehicle, but a new company?
Well, simplify. There's your 3 answers, right?
Okay. Anything you want as long as it's black.
Everything. Simplify. This is not just about the design of the vehicle that has, a third of the parts that a normal vehicle does going into assembly plant. So it has 600 versus 2,500 that Rivian had. It's not just about not having a paint shop and not having a stamping shop. It's not about looking at the overall program management and really getting creative on how many builds you need and how much buffer time and how many iterative loops, because we have to take a little more risks. We can't be the anti-risk companies that are these 100-year-old legacies. So we have to take some risks. And we've taken risks. We don't talk a lot about those publicly, but we take risks. They were calculated risks, and they were based on very experienced engineers, leadership talent, almost everyone in our company early on. What I learned at Rivian after spending 20 years at Harley, I was a much, much better leader after 2 years at Rivian because of the balance of a legacy company and a startup.
Can you share one example of these risks? One example. I won't tell Jeff you told me.
No, it's as simple as the program management would normally have 2 or 3 iterations after a design validation build. We said, no, you get 1 iteration. So be smart about the changes we need to make. Make sure that the computer model is fully correlated so that we don't have to do 2 or 3. 2 or 3 loops is actually a lazy approach. You get 1. So use more technical skills, maybe leverage some AI from all the masses of experience that are out there, but you get a single iteration of the loop at these key milestones.
Something I'm learning from you, again, was in the tech world many years, raise money for companies. And there's one way, if you raise money and you get a pile of dough, it's doled out over time to fund your company. And then there's smart money. There's smart money where we're giving you money, but you're going to work with our kind of korematsu. And we're going to grow together because we have experience in a market you're trying to get in and we're going to help you, or a complementary market. It sounds to me that Amazon wasn't just, oh, here's a nice term sheet and we think we can make a couple of bucks. It sounds to me it's the very DNA of the company. True or false?
So one little correction. Amazon didn't invest in us. Personally, Jeff Bezos did.
Okay.
But that's not where it's coming from. Now we did engage Jeff Bezos early on after Series A. During Series A, he came in, we pitched him, we sat down with him and we had a casual conversation, and it was just amazing to see where his focus was, right? And so we answered his questions, but he left the room. He wrote a good check, and he's been a supporter. But where that culture, that mindset, that leadership ability came from was our board member, Jeff Wilkie, who, had worked for Jeff Bezos for years. But Jeff Wilkie, now retired, really brought that scrutiny, that mindset, as well as even the process of doing a press release FAQ for Slate, as well as for very specific parts of it, narrative. So it's the whole, you don't use PowerPoints. Well, Jeff Wilkie taught us that within the first week. We're not going to do PowerPoints. We're going to do narratives, and that's forces the author and the team to actually detail things out much, much more than just doing a PowerPoint where you just talk to a few bullet points. That actually changed the DNA of Slate and forced us to think of the details, answer the questions before Jeff Wilkie or the board would ask us the questions, because it just created a much more detailed process that we would refine before we would present it up.
On the other side of the fight, Apple, we used to call it, nobody can be a wonderful whiner. You can't come to me with a problem. You can come to me with a problem, but you damn well better believe you come to me with a solution. And it can't be, well, back then it was PowerPoint, but it can't be Keynote. It had to be like, boom, boom, boom.
Yep.
So, okay. So it is true. The DNA of Bezos and Amazon is very entrenched in this company, it sounds to me.
Yes, I would say, again, Jeff Wilkie brought it in. So I would say that...
But not just Jeff. I've met some people that worked at Amazon that are working...
There's a number of Amazonians that are here, but I would say the philosophy, the business approach is highly influenced by Amazon. But I would also say the culture is uniquely Slate. And,
what does that mean?
And what that means is, again, we came up with a very purposeful culture that I would say is, more focused on the people. And it's not a hold hands and sing kumbaya culture. It means close the door. We're in a meeting. We can take off the gloves.
Yeah.
But we're going to respectfully challenge each other. And then at the end of it, we may agree to disagree, but we're going to go to the coffee machine and have a coffee together. And there's going to be no resentment. We've all agreed. We're moving in the same direction.
In New York, we call it the gift of clarity. One of your boys, so Jeff was the guy from New York, the MIT guy from New York?
Miles.
Miles was from New York.
Yep.
I want to meet that guy. I'm sure I'd like him.
Yeah, you would have a great conversation with him.
So being direct, I'm going to switch gears on you a little bit here. You famously went to Rivian from a very entrenched company. You've been through what did I call it? The hell week or the hell long?
Production hell.
Production hell. You've been through it. First, give me like a definition, a specific, like what is production hell and how are you dealing with it here?
So I will say when I went to Rivian, I went eyes wide open, right? It's still a startup, but it was a very large startup. There were 1,500 employees. It was still an engineering focused company. And so my role was COO and was to balance it out to become a manufacturing and ultimately, commercially consumer driven company. And so
was that your expertise over at Harley?
Was more operational. Yeah. I mean, I did run sales, but I would say my superpower is more on the operations side. I'm an engineer. So I went into Rivian knowing that was the task. And RJ Scaringe, he's a brilliant CEO and founder, and he was all supportive. We aligned at the top line about what the culture should be.
Didn't he go to MIT as well?
He went to MIT.
Yeah.
So what?
A lot of themes, man. I'm learning a lot of themes.
I went to Rivian. I probably didn't know. It was probably good I didn't know what I was getting myself into. But I spent almost 2 years there, and we transitioned the company to be a manufacturing, consumer, balanced company, all functions, not just engineering. And we tried to do something nobody had ever done. And RJ's never failed at anything. He's a brilliant human being. He's a brilliant engineer. He's an incredible problem solver. But in my view, what I learned from Rivian after being there, we tried to do too much too soon. And so we tried to launch 3 vehicles at one time, tried to ramp up 2 assembly lines at the same time, tried to do it probably more quickly than we should have. And in that short period of time, we scaled from 1,500 employees to 10,000. So doing all of those things at once with a highly engineered vehicle that is a software-defined vehicle, which is even more difficult, and Tesla is the only other really good example of that. That was production hell. Production hell means you got so many more problems than you can handle at one time. And that's where great problem-solving skills come into play, but it just means it's hell. And it's not hell for a week, it's hell for a year. And
hell because you're literally trying to land an airplane on an aircraft carrier that in a storm. That's what it sounds like.
And you're a startup, so you have very aggressive timelines and goals, and unfortunately, you're not hitting any of them. So it's a very challenging time period. You have suppliers that may not be the top tiered supplier because they're the only ones that are going to bet on a startup, and they're not delivering either. And then, by the way, my first day that I started at Rivian was March 16th of 2020. That was the day the pandemic shut down. I was driving from Milwaukee to Plymouth, Michigan, where at that time, Rivian's headquarters were there. I got to the Indiana border and RJ called me and said, turn around, we're shutting down our facilities. So I drove back home and I started as a COO in my basement for Rivian. So the pandemic caused a lot of challenges as well, but also taught the company how to really work remotely and across functions. So there was a lot of good that came out of the force function of the pandemic, but the production hell was real. And so you asked the question, what did we learn from that? I mean, that's why Jeff and Miles called me. They didn't know anyone else, but I had just come out of Rivian, so I was probably still a little bit scarred and dazed. But what was on the front of my mind is, if I were to ever do this again, this is what I would do different. And it is simplify, simplify, simplify. Focus. We don't need to do 3 products at once. Let's do 1. In manufacturing, we don't need to vertically integrate everything. Let's only do what we have to. And on and on and on. And that's been one of the themes, and it's one of the tenets of Slate, is how do we simplify things?
So I want to go off on a tangent just a little bit.
Please.
RJ. Okay. You know how you have kids, right? They get older, they go off to college, then they leave college, and then they live on their own, they get married, they have kids, and that's when people downsize. They get a smaller house because they're trying to simplify, right? I feel like RJ did the opposite. He's like, I got to start up in Plymouth, Michigan, where the expenses are nice and low. What's my next step? I'm going to open up a headquarters in Irvine, California. Why on God's green earth did he do that?
I have no idea. I asked the question. I'm like, this is the opposite of rational, logical.
I mean, that's like, please drill a hole in my head.
But, so I don't know why.
Okay.
He never answered that for me. But you also have to remember, this was 2020. Rivian was the darling. They had revealed their R1T and R1S at the LA Auto Show, and it was wildly successful. Amazon, then Ford, each put in over $500 million, so they had a lot of money very quickly. And they had a board of directors that was made up of their earlier investors, as well as Ford and Amazon. And they were saying, go faster, go faster, go faster, do more. And so because EV was kind of analogous to what AI is today, money was free, it was flowing, and there was a lot of pressure to be the first. So I think RJ did what the board wanted him to do, was do more and do faster and keep going. And in retrospect, there's too much.
Do you have that problem? Because you guys got a lot of money. You got money from the money tree. Is someone telling you, go faster?
No, I think we set out expectations up front that we are going to go very fast. But we also
Wait, you told your investors we're going to go fast.
We're going fast. We're gonna produce at the end of 26, whereas a normal company would have said probably 28. So we calibrated the board, but we said we're going to go very fast. But we're going to also be very, very focused. We are doing one vehicle. We are doing one simple vehicle. We're doing manufacturing in a very capital light. Everything we do is actually capital light. While we have a lot of money, it actually isn't enough money, right? It's enough to get us through the next phase. But we'll ultimately raise $1.5 billion and thereabout, and we will be profitable on gross margin profitable on every vehicle. Remember, it took RJ 4 years to get gross profitable on his first vehicle. We're going to do it with the first unit coming off the line will be gross profit positive. We will be positive cash flow by the end of our first full year of production. So we are going to do something no other company has done except for Tesla.
How can you be so certain of this?
Because we are 4 years in and we are on schedule, we are on budget, and we have the team, and we have the assets, and we have the wherewithal that we are going to succeed.
How much of Slate does Rebuild still own or control?
I don't know what the cap table shows anymore. I apologize for that.
Do you think that is the big reason why you are on budget, on schedule?
I think our board, which I'm a part of, and there's 3 Rebuild members on the board, are very, very detailed and very specific and hold us accountable. But actually, we hold ourselves accountable. So, I mean, the management team holds themselves accountable. That's why we're still on schedule after 4 years. So we're going to raise about $1.5 billion to get ourselves to profitability. That is, I mean, Rivian spent over $25 billion. Tesla took $35 billion to hit profitability. So what we are going to do is at a scale much, much less than them. And it is about simplicity. It is about focus. And it is about being innovative in identifying a very capital light way of doing things, both for the customer and for the company itself.
All of us here at MotoMan are super excited to not only have the podcast back, but for it to be its own show. And there we look to you for a little assistance. Can you help us grow the show? 2 really easy ways to do that. First and foremost, if you're reaching out via YouTube or other streaming platforms, you click on subscribe, notifications, or more importantly, share these episodes with your friends, especially on Reddit. Now, if you're downloading these episodes, listening via podcast platforms, we'd ask you to rate us. The good stars are wonderful, but leaving a written review would be even better, especially sharing who was your favorite guest. So with that, I am incredibly grateful for your assistance in help growing this. And now, back to the episode. Let's go back to the SWOT analysis.
Okay.
You've been around the block, my friend. You've fought a lot of battles. You're like, I feel like you've been part of like 3 of the 5 crime families. So Ford obviously came out and said, we're doing our own low-end truck. Ford has a great truck that's $27,500 and has 2 things you don't have: back doors. Toyota's coming out with a truck. Does any of this worry you?
Yes, and it should, right? Competition is good. It makes us better, makes us stronger, makes us think differently. But what you mentioned is one of the core problems with the automotive industry. The Maverick starts at $27,500. The new low-cost EV pickup truck that Ford's announced is going to start at $30,000. Ours starts at $24,950, and it ends at $24,950. Those starting prices.
Is there a shipping charge? Destination handling?
And everybody has one, and ours, we haven't announced it. Ours will be much less than Ford's.
Okay. Because that's been creeping up as of late.
Ford's is over $2,200.
It's crazy, yeah.
So I can guarantee you ours will be less, but it's another way for them to gain margin. So the problem is automotive companies are deceptive. They lead with a price that the customer will never get that vehicle. The Maverick started at $19,995, 5-6 years ago. You could never buy one of those.
No, you couldn't.
The average used Maverick on, take your website, Carvana, is $35,000. Where's the $27,500 one? You can't get it. Or if you do, it's a special order and you got to wait a half a year to get it. So that to us is the problem for the customer. And so that's part of what we're trying to solve. What you see is what you get. It's one price. It's all in. It's not trying to sell you something different.
So the audience can't hear this, but CJ, who really, this guy says he's on the board, he's not the boss. The boss is CJ.
Absolutely.
He's the one, see, even the board member says this. CJ runs the show because he runs the accessories, and frankly, he's the most entertaining at the company. He just made a good point. When can you go on a dealer lot and get the car that you want? Now, my problem is different. It's the same thing, but I come at it a different way. You go on any dealer lot, you get anything you want as long as it's the German rainbow, silver, white, or black. God help you if you want like a red car, a blue car.
Absolutely.
Nobody has that, which kind of blows my mind. Now, the European model's a little bit different. European, there is no stock. It's like everyone does order the car. And my personal car, I did order, granted I waited a long time for it, but I think only people at upper end are used to that waiting. Right. Anyway, I'm taking away from it. So you're saying that you're not worried because the reality is different than the posted number. You're saying our car, every one of them is $25,000, where, yeah, $27,500, but try to find one.
So I'm always worried about competition, because when you're not worried, then you're arrogant and you're going to get your clock cleaned, quite honestly. So I am always worried about competition. Ford is an excellent company. It's been around since 1903. So they know what they're doing. I actually, Jim Farley, I think he's a great CEO. I think he's really done some great
totally agree.
For Ford.
Great CEO.
And we talked to them early on. We had them as
an investor.
Yeah, as a potential investor when we were going through one of our rounds and we were struggling to find investors. We brought them in and, they looked at it and they're like, this is great, but we're doing our own thing. And so, we have respect for them. I think they have respect for us. So is it worrying me? Yes. I think the one strength that you talked about with your introductory comments, we talk about affordability, we talk about customization, we talk all these great things. The one thing that our vehicle has to have, it has to be desirable. There's a lot of cheap cars that were introduced over the years that never sold because they're junky, they don't look good. The customer didn't desire to have them. And maybe it was just because there was not a sub-brand that was built up that attracted someone to, name your Nissan Versa or name your, cheap vehicle. But from day one, we said the community and the brand actually need to go hand in hand with what we're trying to do. It's got to be a desirable car, not just desirable. And you heard it from both Peter and Chris up on stage. Not just desirable. We want our customers to love our vehicle. Americans are kind of crazy. We often define ourselves by or with the vehicle we have. And that's why we think Slate's going to be so important, because it's going to really help the customer show the world who they are. Because it's not silver, white, and black. They can go Shrek green. They can go Barbie pink. And it won't change the resale value on their vehicle because they can take it right off and you got the blank slate. So our residual value will be back up.
I asked CJ this. What do you know about the demographics of those 180,000 people that already said, I want one? What do you know about them? How many men, how many women?
I don't know much because I'm now just a lonely old board member. No, I know.
Sitting in your mansion in Milwaukee counting your money.
I know enough to be dangerous, but there are some very wise individuals in the commercial side of the business that are diving into the analytics, and they know a lot about our customers. And, you even heard Peter say, hey, we changed our battery strategy based on the initial reservations. So we do study that. We do understand it, especially on the accessories
So
side.
you can't give us a little tidbit.
No, I can't. What I will say though is I don't, and this is not data driven. This is gut driven, and I'll explain it. When we conceptualized Slate, the first several months, we identified the target customer as someone who has never bought a new vehicle and probably has never bought a used vehicle because they can't afford one. They can't afford a $30,000 used vehicle. They can afford the $5,000 used vehicle that they buy from their Uncle Vinny that they're going to have to put in $1,000 a month, and then it's going to be laying in a trash heap, quite honestly. That's the vehicle they can afford. They're not even on the radar screen. They don't hit any data. That's why we can't do consumer data, consumer research, because our true target customer is not buying a vehicle today. We're not selling to them right now. That's very few of those are in the 180,000. The people in the 180,000 are like CJ, you and I. It's going to be a second vehicle. It's going to be, or maybe one of our
See,
kids.
I predict it's CJ. It's a dude that's going to put like forest on some sort of like forest picture all over the car. Right. He's probably going to have like, I don't know, Green Day stickers on it. I don't know, whatever the hell he listens to. That's what I see.
Totally.
I see like 1.9% of those 180,000 people are women. I just don't see any women buying this thing.
So I think the person who's in the 180,000 are not going to be the people we're selling it to 3 years from now. I think we will get to our target customer, and our philosophy and our higher guiding purpose is to really open roads for those people that don't have a mode of transportation, and it's limiting their financial ability, their ability to get a job that can actually improve their financial ability. So we believe that we still talk about the target customer, even though we know most of those 180,000 are not the target customer. We're going to get to them, and I personally believe we're going to get to them when we can start leasing it, because as you know, a new vehicle, you really can't start leasing it because the banks want to know what the residual value is, and it takes a year or so to determine residual value. I believe our residual value is going to be much higher than most people think because you can bring it back to the blank slate. And it's got a powertrain and a battery warranty of 110,000 miles. So our residual value will be high. We'll be able to offer a lease rate, ideally under $300 a month. And that person or that family who struggles to buy a vehicle and they have public transportation, bus and subway passes that are $150 each, now they can actually combine and go pay for a leased vehicle. It's going to change their life more than anything.
But, okay, my pushback to you would be that person doesn't have a garage, much less a charger at home, which makes owning an EV very challenging.
Not a Slate. So
why not?
We've thought of that.
Okay, tell me.
Because the average person drives less than 20 miles. 95% of people drive less than 35 miles a day.
But, okay, I heard this with the Volt. That's how long I've been around.
Right.
People, it's psychology. It's not numbers.
So I'll tell you, I'm actually experimenting on myself with a range of 30 miles, which does 95% of what I need. So the Slate with a 110 outlet will be able to charge at the apartment complex with an extension cord if they need it. They'll be able to generate 35 to 40 miles of range a night. No garage needed, no level 2 charger. So we think that's really important. We know the Walmarts of the world, a Walmart's going to have chargers in every one of their parking lots within 5 years. Our target customer
is a Walmart
customer. And
this
what
guy,
is it, 90%
you connect the dots, man. You got it all.
And 90%.
Yeah.
80 or 90%.
That's why he makes the big bucks and you don't.
People in the U.S. live within 10 miles of Walmart. So there are solutions coming that are going to definitely help the person who is in an apartment and doesn't have access to a garage.
We're going to have to come back. I want to come back to this. We're going to put this pin in this part of the conversation. Yep. You and I are going to talk more about this in like a year after the leased residuals and see if people are actually doing this. Right. Now switch gears a little bit. You were employee like number one.
I was number one.
Okay. Not like you were employee number one.
Yeah.
So take me back to the discussion. We're going to make an affordable vehicle. Put aside what the propulsion system was. Was there a debate, 2-door or 4-door? Was there ever that debate? And if so, what?
Oh, yeah. There were many, many, many debates. So once we got started, I joined as employee number 1, hired Chris Barman as an incredible CEO. We hired Eric Kuiper as the head of engineering, Tisha Johnson as the head of design, and Eric Fields as the head of manufacturing. My requirement was we have to hire manufacturing, engineering, and design together because I called it the three-headed monster. They're going to sit together. They're going to co-design this vehicle together so they can't point fingers at each other later. And it actually worked out quite well. So we started conceptualizing very early of what this vehicle should be. Well, what's the form factor of the least expensive vehicle? It's a 2-door pickup truck. But everyone we talked to said, but last year, only 50,000 2-door pickup trucks were sold in the U.S. So go look at the data. Well, what came first, right? The chicken or the egg? So we said, no, none are offered. So why would people buy them? And the customers you're talking to are not the target customer who can't afford them. So we had the debates and we came back to the 2-door is the least expensive. And we can create an SUV, a 5-passenger SUV. So out of costs and out of hitting this target, which we believe is very important, we said 2 doors.
So it was 100% cost decision.
Yes.
That's how we get to $24,950.
The 2 more doors doesn't get you there.
Give me an example. Like how much would 2 more doors have cost?
I don't know, but more than we want.
Something tells me at some point I think we're going to find out.
So
in your future.
No, your question is a good one. I would modify your question. Your question should be, well, should the second model have 4 doors? Well, we package protected for 4 doors, but we're introducing a 2-door.
Okay. I asked and answered. Thank you, sir. Now I'm going to switch gears on you again. We are settling all family business today, if you haven't figured it out. The battery pack. Let's go back to this the thing that excites me about this company is the whole manufacturing in the U.S. And I'll say it right to the camera. By giving people that live in the hollowed out sections of this country a reason to get up in the morning, that's why this company is important. That's why it's a big deal, 2-door or 4-door. But now you want to make a battery, something that runs on a battery. The EV, man, the supplier network, it is not forgiving to the Midwest. So what challenges have you faced and how are you going to address it?
So you're right. Today, if all you looked at was today and in the rearview mirror, you would do an internal combustion engine vehicle. But as I said earlier, maybe not to you, but internal combustion engine's been around for 150 years, and it's at the point of diminishing returns, less than 1% improvement in whatever cost, efficiency, whatever performance metric you want each year. It's diminishing, it's flatlined. If you look at an electric vehicle, whether it be the powertrain, which is motor, inverter, and battery, we're at the sunrise. We got 150 years to improve it. And we know that at least for the last 10 years, the battery improvement's been 8% a year, both whether you call it energy density as well as cost. It's been 8%. So, that's where everyone projected in 2026 or 2027, they're going to cross paths and an internal combustion engine vehicle and an EV will be about the same cost. Well, pandemics happened, false supply happened, lots of things happened. We're not quite there, but the amount of money and capital and R&D on batteries and primarily batteries, because about 1/3 of the cost of an EV is the battery. So there are so many improvements that are going to be coming. And as an engineer, I know an electric vehicle is a better product long-term than an internal combustion engine.
Lovely. Not what I was looking for.
Sorry, I disappointed you.
I mean, I feel like I just went to church. I feel like I got the homily for the week.
What do you want?
Okay, actually,
Keep going.
I'm going to come back to this for
Yep.
1 minute. Picking up on your point, was there ever a debate like, yeah, from a very cerebral point of view, EV makes sense from this, and this, but people aren't buying EVs. People buy cheap gas cars. We should just do a cheap gas car for now. What was that discussion?
No, the problem is we went and bought a cheap gas car.
Yeah.
Mitsubishi.
Oh, the Mirage.
Whatever. Yeah, Mirage.
Oh, man.
And you drive it and you realize that's why only 25,000 of these have sold this year. It's a piece of junk.
Well, in fairness, Suzuki makes one for an Indian market, which is killer.
So everything in the U.S. that's an IC engine-based vehicle is terrible. It's either doesn't look good, it sounds terrible, it's something nobody wants, or maybe it's just a brand cachet that people don't want it. So when we started this out, we're not going to lead with EV. Actually, EV is the third or fourth thing on the list. It's an affordable vehicle. It happens. The least exciting thing is it actually happens to be an EV. You know why? Because long-term, the cost of material, the bill of material cost is going to go down as batteries get lower. So ideally, we could offer it for less than $20,000 once the battery gets
So you're
low.
saying the choice to go EV wasn't, hey, we want to build an EV. It's cost and packaging.
Yep.
That was okay. Now back to my point. We're in 2024. You're going to build a car in 2026. You need a supplier of the batteries or what's in the batteries. What are the challenges? Because you're making a car in the Midwest. You know, where are you getting the batteries from, and how much of a challenge is that for the startup?
From day one, battery we knew would actually. When I talked to Jeff and Miles when they first introduced the idea to me, I said, the number one challenge is going to be the battery. Because we're another EV startup, many suppliers, both battery suppliers and other component suppliers, have been burned by EV companies that have overpromised, underdelivered, and gone out of business and left them hanging. So we knew that was going to be a challenge. So when we started off on our journey, we called all of the top 5, 6, 8 battery suppliers. And nobody would talk to us because they had already sold out all their capacity to all the big OEMs and new startups. And
so it's kind of like a foundry. It's kind of like chips.
Yeah.
You commit to it, and it kind of locks people out of the market.
Well, there were a lot of JVs. I mean, look at SK On and Ford. They were building plants together, and Samsung and Rivian. I mean, there were a lot of JVs and joint, partnerships that were building capacity in the U.S. because the projections were off the chart. And nobody would answer our call, or even they're like.
And this is in 22, 23?
Yeah, 22, 23 to 24.
Yeah.
So we found a battery startup that would at least talk to us, and they were in the same boat we were. We worked together. We could do this together, and we started working with them, and we got a couple of the prototype batteries. And long story short, after 6 to 9 months, it wasn't going to meet our needs. They were probably not going to be successful. They will go unnamed. So we had to pivot away and rebuild with their ongoing operation of actually having money and being profitable and really demonstrating growth. We were able to leverage them as a partner with us to get a couple of battery companies to talk to us. So that was the first step. And Rebuild actually decided that they were going to create a division within their company that was going to focus on battery packs, and could potentially be a supplier for us. And so this was all worked together. And when we revealed, that was our battery strategy at the time. As Peter said, we learned a lot from the reservations that 80% had wanted a larger, more range of a battery. And Trump and other things that caused the EV industry to really go down in the U.S. Opened up a lot of battery capacity. And lo and behold, after our reveal, we started getting calls from them saying, hey, we're ready to talk to you. So we went and talked to several battery suppliers and reevaluated our strategy, and ultimately was able to partner with a company that can provide over 200 miles of range in the same, package space instead of modules, but it sells into a pack, which is a more efficient way anyway. So it was a win-win-win across the board.
So you have a supplier, you Rebuild is or is not getting into the battery business?
Rebuild is getting into the battery business. I can say they are not our supplier at this point.
Interesting. How did that happen?
That's just how it evolved. It wasn't the right solution for both companies.
Okay, switching gears on you again.
Yes.
You seem to know a lot about manufacturing. I'm enjoying this conversation. Hoosier Hospitality. Back home again.
Hoosier Hospitality?
Come on, you should know this. You've been spending enough time in Indiana.
Indiana's a great state.
So how did it come about? Did you guys do like a bake-off with different states and say, hey, man, I'm going to give you a factory, but I want a deal?
No. So I would say that was the back end of it. The front end of it was Eric Fields, who was our first head of manufacturing, who was the head of manufacturing for me at Rivian. He started a site selection process where we listed kind of the key attributes. Pretty basic. Everyone does them, right? The fact that we're doing an EV manufacturing location, we really, really wanted brownfield, because that's part of our DNA and kind of a higher purpose is revitalizing a community in a manufacturing.
So for the avoidance of that's a facility that's already there. You just want to stand a new one up.
You don't want greenfield. It saves money, saves time. But again, revitalizing a community was really important to us. So
were you involved in the Diamond Star, like Normal Illinois thing with Rivian?
Yeah. So that's where our plant was, the old Mitsubishi plant, and so I lived down there for 18 months. So yeah, and so very similar. Let's go find a brownfield plant. There are at that point in time, all of the auto companies that had vacant plants had sold them all to EV companies and other companies. So there are really none available. So long story short, we looked at the whole U.S. We went down to several states. We kind of went through the funnel. Ultimately, it was down to 3 or 4 states and about 5 or 6, locations. And Indiana checked every one of the boxes, quite honestly.
Didn't answer my questions. Did they give you a deal?
So we then worked with them both at the community level and the state level. And I would say, they have been very, very good supporters of Slate, and not just all in a financial way, just great partners. So
kind of explain it to me, because I did an internship when I was back in college. I built BMWs in Germany. That's all I know about manufacturing. Software is what I know. So you're building this thing in Indiana. You're going to sell it for $25,000. So I'm assuming you're going to make a couple of bucks on it. How much cheaper, putting aside the tariffs and all that kind of stuff, how much cheaper would it be to build that thing in China, in Western Europe, in South America?
I don't know, because it's never been even a thought that we've had. You could argue that it would be cheaper in China because China is building lower cost electric vehicles. But we've never done an apples and apples comparison, because it's not even, Slate won't be here if that's even part of the plan, quite honestly. So we really didn't think about it, because part of our purpose is to revitalize U.S. manufacturing.
The point I'm getting at there is, I feel like I want to believe, I'm going to sound very patriotic here, as we come up to our 250th birthday in next week. I want to believe that there is a path forward to repatriate some manufacturing back into this country. Yes, some of it would be more expensive. Like, I don't think my undershirt, probably not going to do it here in the U.S. But a car, an iPhone, Apple already proved that they can do it with the screens. Yep. Like, I almost didn't believe it. I thought it was like AI slop on X when I first saw the thing. And then Tim Cook is in the White House saying, we're going to manufacture parts of the iPhone in the U.S. I'm like, is there more that could be let me phrase the question differently. What else could do the Slate or the Apple screen thing in the U.S.?
And that's the conversation you should have with Miles Arnone, the CEO of Rebuild Manufacturing, because that's exactly what they are doing. They are looking at very specific industries, aerospace, kind of advanced materials, engineered materials, battery packs, things like that, that have value added that and innovation and production capability that we thrive at in the United States. An undershirt, probably not, right? Commodity items, very, very difficult. But US, I mean, it's the tech hub of the world. And what we're actually seeing is a lot of startups now who are deciding we're going to manufacture this in the United States. So there is while you read the paper even today, well, employment in manufacturing went down. I argue that's noise. We are in a manufacturing renaissance, but it's going to take a decade or two. I know a couple of people who, again, went to graduate school with, who they're called Next Gen. They're tracking all new announced manufacturing plants, and there's over 250 of them. It's over $500 billion that has already been stated is going to be used for these new manufacturing plants. So it is coming, not just because of pandemics and other reasons. It's because actually these new startups see the opportunity. They know time is a factor. They know location is important. And they also believe in national security and all the other good things that we talked about. So I truly believe it's coming. And the other thing that we have going for us is AI. It allows us to have another step function in productivity that we can control here in the U.S.
Sir, I can't thank you enough for this. This has been an enlightening conversation.
Well, thank you for having me.
I'm glad I chased my British car loving friend who knows more about EVs than me. And actually, I think the big thing I learned from this at the end was Jeff needs to get me connected with Miles.
Yes.
Because I think you're lovely. I love CJ more than you, but I think Miles is going to be my one true love.
You will love Miles, so
yeah,
I agree.
And I want the New Yorker to come on with me as well. Down. This is the point of the episode we turn around to the audience. So my audience is famously very honest, very, very vocal. What would you like to know from the audience about Slate, about futuring, about motorcycles? I don't know. What would you like to know from the audience? What feedback would you like from the audience?
Well, I think a piece of feedback that cuts across generations and it means something different to different generations is how important is it to be made in the United States?
What's that song? Lee Greenwald? Proud to be an American? I feel like you're going to break into that right now.
You don't want to hear me sing.
And with that, Rod, I can't thank you enough for this.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. Thank you, sir. I really enjoyed getting to meet you and talking with you. I look forward to our going relationship.
I will make an offer to you. Very Americana. We do. We're based at an airport here. We have a formation flying team, old warbirds, and we go over different events.
Cool.
Things like presidential libraries. More than welcome to put you in the back seat and take you for a flight.
Awesome. Sounds like a plan.
Until we see you in the next episode, be spectacle.